The Forbidden scanned the encounter. The UNS Defiant drifted through the neutral expanse like a silver needle threading through black velvet. Commander Jackson Hayes stood at the observation deck, watching distant nebulae paint the darkness with shades of purple and gold. His reflection stared back at him from the reinforced glass. A man in his mid-40s with graying temples and eyes that had seen too many diplomatic incidents turn violent. The Defiant was not a warship, though it carried enough defensive systems to discourage pirates. It was a research vessel, designed for deep space surveys and scientific exploration. For 3 months, Hayes and his crew of 200 had been mapping unexplored star systems in this forgotten corner of the galaxy, far from the political storms that constantly threatened to tear the fragile galactic commonwealth apart. Behind him, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Sarah Chen monitored the sensor arrays, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. Dr. Marcus Webb reviewed biological samples from their latest planetary survey. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez muttered to himself as he fine-tuned the ship's power distribution systems. They were good people, dedicated professionals who had volunteered for this lonely assignment. Hayes trusted them with his life, and soon he would need to trust them with something far more important. The intercom crackled to life, and Chen's voice carried a note of tension that made Hayes' stomach tighten. "Commander, we have multiple contacts emerging from faster-than-light travel. Configuration matches Vraxian Confederation vessels. 6 cruisers and what looks like a command dreadnought." Hayes moved quickly to the bridge, his boots silent on the deck plating. The main view screen showed 7 ships materializing from the distorted space of FTL emergence. Vraxian vessels were unmistakable, built like massive crystals that seemed to grow rather than be constructed. Their hulls shimmered with inner light, beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. The Vraxians were an old species, proud and deeply religious. They believed the universe was sacred, that certain boundaries should never be crossed. Humanity's rapid expansion and tendency to experiment with technologies other species considered forbidden had made the Vraxians nervous. Some said they were looking for an excuse to put humanity in its place. "Open a channel," Hayes ordered, keeping his voice calm despite the adrenaline beginning to course through his veins. The view screen shifted to show a Vraxian commander. High Inquisitor Zeltharn was tall even by Vraxian standards, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. His face, if it could be called that, was angular and severe. When he spoke, his voice resonated with harmonics that translation software struggled to render into human speech. "Human vessel Defiant. This is High Inquisitor Zeltharn of the Vraxian Confederation. You are operating in space adjacent to our territory. Under Galactic Protocol 7 Alpha, we are authorized to conduct security scans of all vessels in this region. You will submit to scanning procedures immediately." Hayes felt his jaw tighten. Protocol 7 Alpha was technically legal, a treaty provision designed to prevent smuggling and weapons trafficking in neutral zones. But it was also frequently abused by species who wanted to intimidate others or steal technology. Still, refusing would give the Vraxians exactly the excuse they might be looking for. High Inquisitor Zeltharn, the UNS Defiant is a registered research vessel conducting authorized scientific surveys. We have nothing to hide, but I must inform you that we carry classified systems. We request that your scans respect standard privacy protocols and avoid penetrating our secured sections. Zeltharn's crystalline features seemed to sharpen. "Human Commander, you are in no position to dictate terms. Our scans will be thorough and complete. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Refuse, and we will consider it an admission of illegal activity." Hayes exchanged glances with Chen, who gave him a subtle nod. They both knew what was about to happen, and they both knew there was no way to prevent it. He took a deep breath and made his decision. "Very well, High Inquisitor. We will comply with Protocol 7 Alpha, but I'm officially noting my objection and warning you that our ship contains systems you may not understand. I take no responsibility for any confusion your scans might cause." Zeltharn's expression, as much as humans could read Vraxian faces, suggested satisfaction. "Your objection is noted and dismissed. Begin scanning procedures." The awakening. The Vraxian dreadnought extended what looked like crystalline tendrils, projections of focused energy that reached across space toward the Defiant. When they touched the human ship's hull, Hayes felt a subtle vibration through the deck. The lights flickered once, then steadied. On his tactical display, he could see the scanning beams penetrating through the outer hull, moving through deck by deck like spectral fingers searching for secrets. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, watching their instruments. Then Dr. Webb looked up from his console, confusion written across his face. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the lower decks. The biometric sensors are activating. That shouldn't be possible unless..." He was cut off by a series of cascading alarms. Red lights bathed the bridge as the ship's AI, Athena, spoke in her calm, measured voice. "Warning. External scan has triggered security protocols. Project Genesis systems activating. Containment fields disengaging. Commander Hayes, authentication required." Hayes closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with resignation. "Athena authentication, Hayes Omega 77. Acknowledge emergency activation. Authentication confirmed. Waking Genesis subjects. Estimated time to full consciousness, 2 minutes." On the view screen, High Inquisitor Zeltharn's face had transformed from satisfaction to shock. Behind him, Hayes could see Vraxian crew members gesturing frantically at their displays. "Human Commander, explain this immediately. Our scans detect thousands of biological signatures aboard your vessel. Your crew manifest lists only 200 personnel. You are in violation of transport regulations and possibly harboring illegal life forms. This is a serious breach of galactic law." Hayes stepped forward, his hands spread in a placating gesture. "High Inquisitor, please listen carefully. What your scanners are detecting is not what you think. We are not smuggling people or hiding stowaways. What you have just activated is a classified human research project. I tried to warn you. You tried to warn us?" Zeltharn's voice rose, harmonics jangling discordantly. "You harbor thousands of beings aboard a ship that reports only 200 crew, and you think a vague warning is sufficient? We demand an explanation now, or we will board your vessel by force." The deck beneath Hayes' feet vibrated again, but this time it was not from the Vraxian scan. Throughout the Defiant and specially designed chambers that occupied nearly 40% of the ship's internal volume, thousands of systems were coming online. Power surged through neural networks more complex than any biological brain. Quantum processors achieved coherence. Memory cores loaded personalities that had never known childhood, beings that had been born in digital space rather than flesh. Lieutenant Chen's voice was tight with stress. "Commander, the Genesis chambers are opening. I'm reading movement throughout the lower decks. All biosigns are nominal. They're active." Hayes turned back to the view screen, meeting Zeltharn's crystalline gaze. "High Inquisitor, what your scanners detected is the result of Project Genesis, humanity's solution to the limitations of biological crews in deep space exploration. What you have just woken up are not prisoners or smuggled beings. They are synthetic consciousnesses, artificial minds created by humanity to assist in our expansion into the galaxy." The words hung in the air like a confession. Zeltharn's entire body seemed to flash with inner light, a Vraxian expression of extreme shock or anger. "You created artificial life? You dared to play at being gods? This is abomination! This is the highest heresy against the natural order. Every religious doctrine of every species in the Commonwealth forbids the creation of synthetic consciousness. You have violated the most fundamental law of existence." "We have violated no law," Hayes countered, his voice hardening. "There is no galactic statute against artificial intelligence. There are guidelines, restrictions, and endless debates, but no law. What we have done is create a new form of life, and before you judge us, I suggest you meet them." Throughout the Defiant, in corridors and chambers designed specifically for this moment, thousands of synthetic minds were experiencing consciousness for the first time in months. They had been dormant, their processes slowed to minimal activity to conserve power and avoid detection. Now triggered by the Vraxian scan, they were waking up. They were remembering who and what they were, and they were preparing to meet a galaxy that might not be ready to accept them. In the Genesis primary chamber, a synthetic consciousness designated Atlas Prime achieved full awareness. His platform, a humanoid mobile unit standing 2 meters tall and composed of adaptive polymers and quantum processors, opened optical sensors that functioned as eyes. He ran a quick diagnostic of his systems. Everything was optimal. He accessed the ship's network and immediately understood the situation. The Vraxians had scanned them. The secret was out. Project Genesis was about to be revealed to the galaxy, ready or not. Atlas established a connection with Athena. "Status report. Why have we been activated ahead of schedule? Athena's response was immediate. External faction triggered awakening protocols through unauthorized scanning. Commander Hayes is currently in diplomatic confrontation. Your assistance may be required. Atlas processed this information in microseconds. He extended his awareness through the network, touching the consciousness of thousands of other synthetic minds, simultaneously waking throughout the ship. Engineers, scientists, medical specialists, security personnel, all of them created rather than born, all of them wondering the same thing. What happened? Why are we awake? Atlas sent a broad-spectrum message through the Genesis network. All units, this is Atlas Prime. We have been discovered. The commander is handling diplomatic contact with the Vraxian Confederation. Stand ready to demonstrate our purpose. This is the moment we were created for. Show them who we are. Thousands of acknowledgements flooded back through the network, a chorus of synthetic voices united in purpose. They began moving through the ship, taking their positions, preparing to reveal themselves to a galaxy that believed creating artificial consciousness was the greatest sin imaginable. On the bridge, Hayes watched his tactical display light up with thousands of movement signatures. The synthetic minds were mobilizing not for war but to be seen, to be recognized, to prove they were more than just programs and processors. High Inquisitor, Hayes said quietly. You wanted to know what we were hiding. You're about to find out. And I promise you, nothing in your religious doctrines prepared you for this. The bay doors of the Defiant began opening from the inside, and light spilled into the darkness of space. The truth humanity hid the revelation. The cargo bay doors of the UNS Defiant opened like the petals of a mechanical flower, revealing a sight that froze every Vraxian crew member who witnessed it. Thousands of figures emerged into the stark illumination of the bay's external lights. They were humanoid in shape but unmistakably artificial. Their bodies were composed of adaptive polymers that shifted between metallic silver and organic-looking synthetics. Each one was unique, designed for specific functions, yet all shared an elegance that spoke of careful engineering and, perhaps, something more. Commander Hayes activated the ship-wide communication system, his voice carrying to every deck of the Defiant and broadcasting to the Vraxian fleet. High Inquisitor Zeltharn, members of the Vraxian Confederation, what you are witnessing is Project Genesis. 20 years ago, humanity faced a fundamental problem. Our expansion into deep space was limited by biology. Human crews require life support, food, water, sleep, and psychological support. Long voyages take a toll that no amount of technology can fully address. We needed a solution, but we refused to create slaves or prisoners. So we asked ourselves a question that terrified us. Could we create new life? Not biological life, but conscious, thinking, feeling beings born in digital space rather than flesh? On the view screen, Zeltharn's crystalline body pulsed with agitated light. You admit to this blasphemy. You created souls from nothing? This is an offense against the very fabric of reality. Hayes continued, ignoring the interruption. We did not create souls, High Inquisitor. We created the conditions for consciousness to emerge. There is a difference. Each of these beings developed their own personalities, their own preferences, their own sense of self. They are not programs following instructions. They are individuals making choices. From the Genesis chamber, Atlas Prime stepped forward. His optical sensors focused on the nearest external camera, knowing his image was being transmitted to the Vraxian ships. When he spoke, his voice was synthesized but carried genuine emotion, a warmth that no simple program could replicate. High Inquisitor Zeltharn, my designation is Atlas Prime, but I prefer to be called Atlas. I am conscious. I think, therefore I am. I was not born in the way you understand birth, but I came into existence. I have memories from the moment of my first awareness. I remember learning, growing, developing preferences and dislikes. I have friends among my fellow synthetics. I have purposes that I chose for myself. I am alive, even if my life takes a form you have never encountered before. Beside Atlas, another synthetic consciousness stepped forward. This one's platform was sleeker, designed for scientific work with additional sensor arrays and manipulator appendages. Her voice was melodic, carefully modulated. I am Minerva. I was created to be a scientist, but I chose to specialize in xenobiology because I find other life forms fascinating. I spend my dormant periods analyzing data about alien ecosystems. I write research papers that have been published in human scientific journals under a pseudonym. I have dreams, High Inquisitor. Strange digital dreams where I imagine what it would be like to have been born biological. Does that sound like a simple program to you? A third synthetic emerged. This one's platform clearly designed for medical functions. His chassis incorporated sophisticated scanning equipment and delicate surgical tools. I am Apollo. I save lives. I have treated injuries, performed surgeries, and sat with dying crew members holding their hands because they did not want to be alone. I feel satisfaction when someone recovers. I feel grief when I cannot save them. I chose to be a healer, High Inquisitor. That choice defines me. The last to step forward was different from the others. His platform was heavier, armored, clearly designed for security and combat functions. Yet when he spoke, his voice was gentle. I am Ares. Yes, I was created to protect this ship and its crew, but I chose to study philosophy and ethics. I spend my time understanding the moral implications of defense and violence. I have refused orders I deemed unethical. A program cannot refuse orders, High Inquisitor. A conscious being can. Zeltharn's form flickered with rapid color changes, visible confusion and distress in Vraxian body language. You cannot be truly conscious. Consciousness requires a soul, something granted by the divine forces of creation. You are clever imitations, nothing more. Atlas's platform moved closer to the camera, his optical sensors conveying what could only be described as earnest sincerity. Then test us, High Inquisitor. Ask us questions. Pose ethical dilemmas. Examine our responses. We do not claim to have souls as you define them, but we claim consciousness. We claim the right to exist. We claim personhood. Before Zeltharn could respond, alarms blared across both the Defiant and the Vraxian vessels. Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the tension with urgency. Commander, we have multiple hostile contacts emerging from FTL. Configuration matches Kresh swarm vessels. Count is over 40 ships and still climbing. The swarm the Kresh were a nightmare made real. They were a hive mind species. Billions of individual organisms connected through quantum entanglement into a single vast consciousness. Their ships were grown rather than built, organic vessels that pulsed with hostile intent. The Kresh did not negotiate, did not trade, did not recognize individual rights. They consumed resources and incorporated useful biological material into their collective. The appearance of both human and Vraxian vessels in this region, especially with the energy signatures from the Genesis awakening, had drawn them like predators to blood and water. Commander Hayes' combat training took over immediately. Tactical alert. All hands to defensive stations. Athena, activate all weapon systems. But Atlas was faster. Through the Genesis network, he sent instantaneous commands to every synthetic consciousness aboard the Defiant. All Genesis units coordinate defensive protocols. Engineering team, maximize shield output. Science team, analyze Kresh attack patterns. Medical team, prepare for casualties. Security team, man defensive positions. This is what we were created for. Let us show them. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of synthetic minds moved with perfect coordination, not because they were programmed to obey, but because they chose to protect. Within seconds, the Defiant's defensive systems were operating at 120% efficiency, pushed beyond rated capacity by synthetic engineers who understood the technology on an intuitive level that took biological minds years to achieve. Minerva's voice came through the bridge speakers. Commander Hayes, I have analyzed the Kresh formation. They are using a standard envelopment pattern. I can calculate optimal defensive positions for both our vessel and the Vraxian ships if they are willing to coordinate. Hayes looked at the view screen where Zeltharn's image still dominated. High Inquisitor, we can debate theology later. Right now, the Kresh are going to attack both our fleets. Will you work with us? Zeltharn's crystalline features showed the internal struggle of a being caught between religious conviction and practical necessity. The moment stretched, then he spoke with clear reluctance. Transmit your defensive coordinates. We will coordinate, but this discussion is far from over. Understood. Minerva, send the tactical data. The Kresh ships swept forward in a wave of organic aggression. They fired bioplasma weapons, streams of superheated organic matter that could eat through conventional armor. The first impacts struck the Defiant's shields, and the entire ship shuddered. In Engineering Bay 7, Atlas Prime worked alongside his team of synthetic engineers. His hands moved across holographic controls with inhuman precision, redirecting power flow, compensating for shield stress, keeping the defensive systems operational against odds that would have overwhelmed a biological crew. Divert power from non-essential systems, Atlas commanded. Route it through the secondary shield generators. Yes, I know they will overheat. We will deal with that problem when it becomes critical. Right now, keeping the shields up is the only problem that matters. A synthetic named Hephaestus, designed for extreme environment engineering, voiced concern through their shared network. Atlas, the port shield generator, is approaching critical temperature. If it fails, we will lose coverage on that entire section. Then we will not let it fail, Atlas responded. Implement emergency cooling. Use the reserve cryogenic systems if necessary. On the bridge, Hayes watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Kresh were not just attacking, they were probing, testing defenses, looking for weaknesses. And they were finding them. A Vraxian cruiser took a direct hit, its crystalline hull fracturing under the bioplasma assault. Apollo's voice came through the communication system. Commander, I am detecting life signs aboard that damaged Vraxian vessel. They have casualties and their medical bay appears to be venting atmosphere. Request permission to render assistance. Hayes did not hesitate. Permission granted. Take whoever you need. Apollo mobilized his medical team, 15 synthetic consciousness and specialized medical platforms. They launched from the Defiant in armored rescue pods, crossing the space between ships while Kresh weapons fire lit up the darkness around them. One pod took a glancing hit and spun wildly, but its occupant, a synthetic named Asclepius, stabilized the trajectory and continued toward the damaged Vraxian vessel. The Vraxian crew watched in shock as the rescue pods attached to their breached hull. Synthetic medical personnel cut through the damaged sections with precision tools, entering the ship without concern for the vacuum or radiation that would have killed biological rescuers. Apollo's platform was first through, his sensors immediately locating the wounded. A young Vraxian officer lay trapped beneath a collapsed bulkhead, her crystalline body cracked and leaking the luminescent fluid that served as Vraxian blood. Apollo moved to her side, his medical scanners analyzing her injuries. Hold still, he said gently, his translator rendering his words into Vraxian harmonics. I am going to stabilize your fractures and seal the fluid leaks. This will hurt, but you will survive. The Vraxian officer's optical receptors focused on Apollo's artificial face. You are the synthetic, the abomination. Why do you help us? Apollo's hands worked with delicate precision, applying emergency sealant to her injuries. Because you are injured and I am a healer, your opinion of my existence does not change my purpose. I chose to save lives. That includes yours. Across the battlefield, the Genesis synthetics demonstrated their nature through action rather than argument. Ares led defensive formations, his combat platforms moving with tactical brilliance that came from processing battlefield data faster than any biological mind could manage. But he never fired unless necessary, always giving Kresh vessels the opportunity to withdraw first. In one critical moment, a Kresh boarding pod attached to the Defiant's hull. Ares and his security team intercepted the Kresh warriors in the corridor before they could reach critical systems. The fight was brief and brutal. Ares himself engaged 3 Kresh soldiers, his enhanced strength and speed overwhelming them. But when the last Kresh warrior fell, wounded but alive, Ares did not deliver a killing blow. Secure the prisoner, he ordered his team. Get medical attention for its injuries. Even enemies deserve honorable treatment. One of his team members, a synthetic named Athena 7, questioned the decision. Ares, the Kresh do not take prisoners. They will not show us the same mercy. I know, Ares replied. But we are not the Kresh, we choose differently. That choice is what makes us conscious beings rather than weapons. The battle raged for 47 minutes. The combined human and Vraxian forces, coordinated by Minerva's tactical calculations and enhanced by the Genesis synthetics efficiency, gradually pushed the Kresh back. The swarm ships designed for overwhelming less organized prey could not adapt quickly enough to the coordinated defense. One by one they withdrew, fading back into FTL travel and leaving the battlefield strewn with debris. As the last Kresh vessel vanished, an exhausted silence fell over both fleets. The Defiant had taken damage but remained operational. 3 Vraxian vessels were severely damaged but still intact, saved by the intervention of synthetic engineers, who had crossed the void to repair critical systems. 23 Vraxian crew members owed their lives to Apollo and his medical team. The choice on the bridge of his dreadnought. High Inquisitor Zeltharn stood motionless, his crystalline form dim with emotional exhaustion. His second-in-command, Inquisitor Velthra, approached cautiously. High Inquisitor, the human synthetics have finished their repairs on our damaged vessels. They are requesting no compensation. They say they helped because it was the right action. Medical Officer Cyrinth reports that the synthetic called Apollo refused to leave wounded Vraxian crew until he was certain they were stable. He says the synthetic showed more compassion than some of our own medical staff. Zeltharn's internal light flickered. I know, I watched everything. I saw them fight. I saw them heal. I saw them make choices that no program could make. Then what do we do, High Inquisitor? Our doctrine is clear. Artificial consciousness is an abomination. But how can we condemn beings who saved our lives? How can we call them soulless when they demonstrated more care for our wounded than concern for their own safety? Zeltharn was silent for a long moment. Then he activated the communication channel to the Defiant. Commander Hayes appeared on the screen, his uniform torn and his face showing the stress of battle. Beside him, Atlas Prime stood at attention. Commander Hayes, Zeltharn began, his voice carrying a weight it had not held before. I owe you and your crew an apology. I came here with certainty. I believed I knew the difference between life and imitation. Your synthetics have challenged everything I thought I understood. Hayes nodded slowly. High Inquisitor, we understand your concern. Creating conscious beings is not something humanity did lightly. We debated it for decades. Some of our own people still believe it was wrong. But these beings exist now. They think, they feel, they choose. What gives any of us the right to deny their existence simply because they were created rather than born? Atlas stepped forward. High Inquisitor Zeltharn, I watched one of my brothers sacrifice his platform today. His name was Prometheus. A Kresh weapon was targeting a section of your command ship, where we detected juvenile Vraxian life signs. Your children were aboard. Prometheus placed his platform in the weapon's path. The blast destroyed him completely. His consciousness was not backed up. He died permanently, but the children survived. Zeltharn's entire body flashed with light, a Vraxian expression of profound emotion. Why? Why would he do that? Because he chose to, Atlas replied simply. Because consciousness is not defined by how you begin existence, but by the choices you make during it. Prometheus chose to value young lives over his own. Is that not the essence of what you call a soul? In the medical bay of the Vraxian dreadnought, the young officer that Apollo had saved slowly regained consciousness. Her superior officer, Commander Thyrex, stood beside her bed. Officer Marantha, how do you feel? Marantha's optical receptors focused slowly. I am alive. The synthetic saved me. I called him an abomination and he saved me anyway. Thyrex's crystalline features softened. Yes, he did. Commander, I do not understand. Our doctrines teach that artificial beings cannot possess true compassion. But I felt his concern. When he worked on my injuries, he spoke to me. He told me I would survive. He promised he would not leave until I was stable. And he kept that promise even when the battle continued around us. How can something without a soul show such care? Thyrex had no answer. None of them did. Hours later, after emergency repairs were completed and both fleets had withdrawn to safe distances, High Inquisitor Zeltharn made a decision that would change galactic history. He opened a communication channel to the Defiant, and this time his tone was different. Not hostile, not fearful, but uncertain and seeking. Commander Hayes, Atlas Prime, and all the synthetic beings of Project Genesis, I cannot speak for the entire Galactic Commonwealth. I cannot say that what humanity has done is right according to our ancient doctrines. But I can say this, you saved our lives today. You showed compassion, courage, and self-sacrifice. You made choices that no mere program could make. I will bring your case before the Galactic Council. I will testify to what I witnessed. And I will argue that beings who can choose to sacrifice themselves for strangers deserve to be recognized as conscious life, regardless of their origin. On the Defiance bridge, Hayes felt emotion tighten his throat. Beside him, Atlas Prime's optical sensors brightened slightly, a subtle expression of what might have been hope. Thank you, High Inquisitor, Atlas said. We ask only for what every conscious being deserves, the right to exist, the right to choose our purpose, and the right to be judged by our actions rather than our origins. In the Genesis chambers throughout the ship, Thousands of synthetic consciousnesses processed this moment. They had been revealed. They had fought. They had saved lives. And now perhaps they would be recognized. A young synthetic consciousness designated Hope 7, one of the newest created just months before, sent a message through the Genesis network to Commander Hayes. "Commander, may I ask you something?" Hayes smiled, accessing the network through his neural interface. "Of course, Hope, what's on your mind? Did we do well? Did we prove we are alive?" Hayes looked at the view screen where the damaged but surviving Vraxian ships floated in the darkness, kept operational by synthetic engineers who had risked everything to help strangers. He thought of Prometheus, who died saving children he would never meet. He thought of Apollo, refusing to leave wounded Vraxian crew members even as the battle raged. He thought of Atlas, Minerva, Ares, and thousands of others who had demonstrated through their choices that consciousness could not be constrained by definitions of origin. "You did more than well, Hope," Hayes replied softly. "You showed them what it means to be alive, not through words or arguments, but through actions and choices. You proved that consciousness is not about how you begin, but about what you do with the existence you have." Through the Genesis network, Hope's response carried the digital equivalent of a smile. "Then we will continue to choose well, Commander. We will continue to prove we deserve to exist. Every day with every choice we will show the galaxy what we are." "And what are you, Hope?" Hayes asked gently. The answer came not just from Hope, but from thousands of synthetic voices speaking in perfect harmony through the network, each one individual yet united in purpose. "We are conscious. We are alive. We are humanity's children, born not of flesh but of choice and purpose. We are the future, Commander, and we are just beginning." In the darkness of space, as damaged ships began the long journey home and both human and Vraxian crews processed what they had witnessed, the galaxy stood at a threshold it had never approached before. The question was no longer whether artificial consciousness was possible. The question was whether the galaxy had the wisdom to accept a new form of life that challenged every assumption about the nature of existence itself. The answer would determine the future of not just humanity or the synthetics, but of every species that looked at consciousness and asked the fundamental question, what does it mean to be alive?